Now to a dire warning about climate change.
The crisis of climate change.
Every day we don't adapt is a day we don't have.
Now the new climate change report just released.
One man's reported to have been killed.
It's completely dried up.
Climate change has been on all of our minds lately, as every day the situation is worsening. We can't wait for politicians and policies to change. Montrealers are not sitting still. In September 2019, following a worldwide climate protest, 500,000 Montrealers marched to demand change. Climate activist Greta Thunberg brings awareness to the discussion in Montreal.
If they would have done their job, we wouldn't need to worry. If they had started acting in time, then this crisis wouldn't be the crisis it is today.
The system has shown that it can take years for policies to be applied and create real change, and we just don't have that time. We looked into how to make change now. Part of the solution could be an international movement called Transition Towns, started in the UK and has been introduced in Montreal over the past few years.
Transition NDG is a collective of a group of people who are really enthusiastic about preparing the society or community for eventual transition. Most importantly, the Transition Town movement creates resilience at the individual level, with the family level, and then neighborhood level, and then community level.
So we started a group about 6 or 7 years ago here in NDG. It's to bring people together to talk about awareness of these big problems that the transition movement was set up to respond to. So letting people know about climate change and oil, that we're running out of cheap oil, and that the oil that's left is going to be really dangerous to the environment. So we did a lot of that in the early years.
An important aspect of transition is permaculture.
So permaculture traditionally deals mostly with agriculture. And actually, transition is often called social permaculture. But it's about kind of recognizing that everything is connected in the world. And there's a lot that we can learn from nature. When different groups of people come together, you know, young people and old people, when the edge of us coming together creates kind of new opportunities and new kind of ways of being together that are kind of exciting.
Outside of Wesley United Church, you can find the team harvesting after a summer of hard work.
You know, I was one of these back to the land hippies in the 1970s. So the environment has always been important to me. We're a core team of several people who coordinate the umbrella transition group, which has a lot of under projects, sub-projects.
We have an emergency preparedness group where one of our members gives workshops to teach people how to prepare for a disaster. We have a group on climate action, we have a permaculture book club, and a knitting circle. And every year kind of something new seems to come into being. The Incredible Edibles project is probably our most visible project, where we grow free food to share on the street. And that's really popular and a lot of fun.
That would be another way of building resiliency and preparing people for emergency situations.
Well, for me personally, it's just I love doing it. It's very sad. It's fun to watch everything grow, and then you get to eat the food that you plant, which is kind of, you know, it's organic and it's ripe on the vine rather than being picked before it gets ripened. So it's always more delicious, and you see where your food comes from, you know, and also just that connection with nature, which is so important.
In this Incredible Edibles, I basically just supervise that it gets watered every day, and sometimes I come and do weeding projects. I had earlier in the season was keeping an eye out for what was ready to pick and encouraging people passing by, people from the neighborhood, to pick them up.
Catherine has transformed her own front yard into an incredible edibles garden.
This year we invited homeowners to donate pieces of their land on the street, on the front lawn, to grow food and share with other people. My neighbor down the street has just taken up his lawn, and he wants to start putting plants in, and his motivation is more that he doesn't want to mow the grass, but I think he's going to enjoy it. And I've noticed a huge difference since I put these plants in, that there are so many more bees and insects around, which I think is really exciting. The insects love it, but as you can see, there's not as many insects now because the flowers are fading. The kale's done well, the Swiss chard, there's chamomile, there's oregano, there's parsley, and the ground cover is all mint. So people are invited to take what they like from the garden, and we've got some little paths. So my 2-year-old neighbor comes over every day and likes to walk around on the path, and she picks parsley, believe it or not, and eats it every day. So we don't have to do it all, but sometimes we might get an idea started and others will pick up on it and carry it on.
On an evening in Maison Coop Vert in NDG, a workshop is held to inform the community about indoor gardening.
Well, my project is called Urban Homestead Montreal, and I rent locations around the city of Montreal to present sustainable lifestyle topics. A little bit of the day, it doesn't have to be. The project is specifically suited to transition towns because it's related to, empowering community through skill sharing, demonstrating through good example, and kind of coming together to look at local solutions on like a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. I do presentations which are open to the community. Through Transition NDG, we offer 2 pay-what-you-can spots to every workshop. There's so many community-led initiatives that have created incredible change. We have lots of rooftop greenhouses. There's community gardens all throughout the city.
Like Sheena's workshop on homesteading, it's really important way of creating or sharing skills so that you can really survive in different situations.
Collaborating with Transition, Naughty Nettle Medicinals offers plant walks and other workshops, helping us understand and connect with our environment.
I think let's go behind the library over here first of all. And
some trees.
Naughty Nettle started off with the city farm school folk. The folk who run the Concordia greenhouse also run an educational an educational farm. With that part of that internship, you have to give a workshop. So I did it at the greenhouse, and 40 people came. The greenhouse was packed. People started turning up like an hour and a half early. Sheena, the coordinator of the greenhouse at the time, was there, and she sat in, and I asked, can I do this again in a month? She said, sure. And so I was like, oh, cool. I started teaching about this stuff. Did we say Basil already?
Memory and recognition and cognition in general. How do you identify? Good question.
You can experience wonder and awe walking around a park more and more often because you're discovering the intricacies and discovering the patterns of life that's going on around you. At the same time, I've found that you open yourself up to hurt because the world is burning. Some places it's screaming. And when you reconnect with nature, you start hearing that sometimes, you start feeling that.
As members of the community, they are asking for more from their local politicians as the crisis transcends day-to-day environmental issues.
The Canadian government keep subsidizing the big oil companies to continue oil excavation and so forth, and I think that is completely unnecessary, or it is quite harmful.
Why can we not have free public transport? It's been seen to be equitable. If you have universal free public transport, it's not just for old people or just on weekends or just in a particular part of the city.
Well, I think a lot of people feel disempowered about what they can do, when you have a government that might be more conservative on the environmental issues. And so it's hard when you have that controlling body and corporations kind of doing whatever, they want, in terms of the environment. So sometimes I think the only thing that can really help with a personal experience of this kind of, ecological grief and wanting to make change is to do so on an individual level,
I'm hopeful that Transition NDG and other community organizations and action are helping out to spread the awareness that we can really reverse global warming if we plant more trees and then grow more indoor plants. Our life is going to be greener and healthier.
It behooves us to look inside ourselves. And I've heard some discussions on the radio, I think people are realizing that you can't just ask them to fix everything, because if they really do what's needed at their end, we have to change our own way of being in the world.
Whether it's a plant walk, local garden, or sustainability workshop, movements like these are a great way to start to learn to be more sustainable. Let's follow Transition NDG and take the climate crisis into our own hands.